I think there are three things to remember when it comes to this conflict. First of all, it is so clear that it was Russian aggression and was completely unjustified. There are no shades of grey in this argument. Ukraine is a sovereign, independent country, a member of the United Nations. This invasion and occupation is illegal. Full stop, end of story. The second thing is, I think that Europe is very united over this issue, and NATO is very united. We've seen two new countries, Sweden and Finland, join NATO, making the organization stronger. And of course, sanctions take time to have an effect, but the long-term effect on Russia, I think, will be very bad for them as Europe stops relying on Russian gas and Russian oil, as the Russian economy suffers from not having the imports that they need from countries with high-tech industries. You know, Russia is a big country, but it's not a big economy. Russia's economy is smaller than Britain, smaller than France. It is not a frontline economy. And I think it will suffer over the long term. And I think the third point, which has surprised a lot of people, is that in this conflict at the moment, Russia is losing. It has lost a lot of territory in the last few months. The weapons that America and Britain and France and other countries have supplied are making a difference. And I think it's very important that we keep up this unity. It would be good to see a talks process at some stage. But I would just say we mustn't do anything to undermine the Ukrainian position. And we mustn't do anything to show that aggression like Putin's is rewarded. So I think it's a really important time for clarity. Something that Ban Ki-moon said in his introduction, I think was so important to hear that from someone of his stature when he said that, you know, when it comes to this issue, neutrality is not an option. I think too many countries in the world have been neutral about this issue. And yet it's utterly clear that this is the invasion of one country by another. And every country that believes in territorial integrity and sovereignty and democracy and freedom should be backing Ukraine, as we will here in the UK. And we know we will pay a price with higher gas prices and economic difficulties. The government will help people with that price. But in any event, it is a price that we have to pay to stop aggression. And we've learned in Europe so many times that if you let aggression pay, you only get a worse situation. China is growing stronger over time as an economy and as a military power and as a force in the world. We can't deny that. But I think the stance it's taken over Ukraine I think has been, from its point of view, a mistake. The Chinese always say how much they believe in the importance of territorial integrity and not interfering in other countries. And yet, when this big test came along, that is not really what they've said. I think it's important to understand that their support for Russia has fallen a long way short of what Russia would like. They're not, as far as we can see, supplying essential weapons and things like that to Russia. But nonetheless, I think countries all over the world should look at the clarity of this situation and look at the Chinese response and see that they're not fulfilling what Ban Ki-moon said about neutrality not being an option. And I think it has a great relevance to your region and what happens in the Indo-Pacific and in Northeast Asia, which is we are seeing a more aggressive China in lots of circumstances against lots of countries, whether it's the arguments they've had with Australia or with Lithuania or arguments they've had around issues in the South China Sea. And China seems to have changed its approach from one where, I think it was the words of Deng, of bide your time and hide your strength. They don't seem to be taking that approach anymore. And I think that has consequences. I'm all for us having a cooperative relationship with China where we can. We must cooperate over climate change. We should try to cooperate over trade. But there are some areas where clearly we're not going to agree, and we have to have a relationship where we're frank and honest and strong and robust about those issues. And I'm sure that has consequences for countries in your region, where I think there'll be a need for greater working together of the democracies in East Asia to make sure that they are not picked off and bullied individually by China.